We are rolling. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind giving us a quick introduction, who you are, where you work, what you do.
Sure. My name is Ryder Will, and I'm currently the superintendent at Mirror Lake State Park, located just south of the Wisconsin Dells. And I've been in this position since January of 2014, and I have worked for the Department of Natural Resources, primarily in the parks program since the summer of 2002.
Excellent. So how did you get into this field?
Sure. So, for my perspective, I got into it slightly by accident, I guess, to be quite honest about it. I had worked for the City of Baraboo Parks and Recreation Department for a number of summers, probably 4 summers, while I was going to college, and had gotten into that work mainly because my grandmother lived adjacent to one of the larger parks in town, and I talked to the park guys quite a lot and thought it was kind of neat what they did. So I spent 4 summers taking care of ball fields, cutting grass, trimming weeds, taking care of parks within the city system. And then I went to college, as I said, working during that time, and I graduated with a degree in public administration and political science. And that summer that I had graduated, I thought, geez, what the heck am I going to do with a degree in public administration and political science? So I talked to a friend who was working for Devil's Lake State Park, which is just outside of Baraboo, and he said, well, why don't you come work for us for a summer? And that was in 2002. And so I went to work for Devil's Lake State Park as at that time the position was called a ranger assistant, and spent the summer helping the rangers, selling stickers, helping with paperwork, those kind of things, and really enjoyed the work. And I thought, oh, I could stand to do this. And so I went back to school, and I think you may have a school-related question later, but went back to school and completed my law enforcement academy, and then returned the following summer as a ranger, and then worked a few summers as a ranger, and then worked my way up from there, and never left after that. Was fortunate to have some other work during the off season, and then continued to work summers, and then eventually was hired full-time and went from there.
All right. That kind of answers I was going to ask you how you got into DNR and what other organizations you've worked for, but that kind of answers it. Other parks, departments,
Sure.
and cities, and
Yep, I did also work for the City of Onalaska Parks Department while I was going to school. I went to school in La Crosse. I did an internship with their Parks and Recreation Department, and then as kind of in conjunction with that internship, I also worked the 2 winters with them, just doing off-season maintenance, taking care of ice rinks, shoveling snow, plowing sidewalks in the parks, those kind of things. So yeah, City of Baraboo, City of Onalaska, and then the DNR for a number of years, both as a limited term employee and as a full-term employee.
okay, excellent. And what's your work environment like? How would you describe your work environment?
Sure, as you may be able to see in the background, I sit at a desk a fair amount of the time. But fortunately, as a park superintendent, I have a fair amount of flexibility in my day-to-day work. So when I have special events or some activities that we have to do, then I have the opportunity to get out on the property a little bit more. Or if there are some concerns or issues that need to be addressed, I'll get out into the field, as we call it, out on the property. We manage a couple of properties in this work unit, so I do have the opportunity to work at multiple park properties, and so I get to have a little bit of variety. But once you reach the superintendent level, it's probably 60-40, even maybe 70-30 time in the office versus time out,
Sure.
actually on the property. The ranger positions or park manager positions, they tend to be a little more skewed to being out on the property
Sure.
more of the time.
Sure. So could you give us a rundown of a typical day for a ranger or a position like that?
Sure. Well, a lot of it has to do with the season. So the summertime is obviously our busier time with camping and a lot of people out using the trails and visiting the park. So our staff they'll start the day. Oftentimes we'll work from work lists, maybe like a weekly work list, sometimes longer term, monthly or seasonal work lists. But the nature of our work is you have to be fairly flexible. Oftentimes overnight or in the morning something will have happened, something will break, or there'll be a facility issue. And so we'll have to be fairly adaptive. But we may work on, checking on buildings in the morning, making sure that things are clean and taken care of. Do a run through the campgrounds, making sure that people are registered and belong on the sites that they're at, and make sure everybody's where they need to be. And then we do, typically we have trails that we'll check, parking areas that we'll check, our use areas, making sure that things are safe and usable throughout the course of the day. Quite honestly, our work is there's a lot of variety to it. You may try to plan. Again, we work from some broad work lists. You may try to have a plan for the day, but oftentimes you got to kind of adapt on the fly. So that's one of the things that really appeals to me about the work is that no 2 days are really the same, and you can't necessarily predict it. Now, certainly there's days that we have specific events going on or specific activities that need to get done, but generally there's a lot of variety in the work. As I said, we do a lot of trail work, facility maintenance, a lot of customer service, both selling stickers, but also a lot of answering questions or assisting people out in the property, giving them directions, those kind of things. So there's quite a variety of work that we get to do in the state park system.
Sure. What, in your opinion, what is the growth and promotional potential in the field or within the DNR?
Sure. Yeah, there's actually a fair amount of potential to grow. As I had mentioned, I started as an LTE, which is limited term employee. Those are non-full-time positions. Oftentimes the folks work full-time, 40 hours a week, but they tend to be limited in nature. Sometimes people will work two different limited term positions, and that will allow them to work close to full-time year-round. But in the park system, the majority of our staff are truly limited term. They'll work the summer and then either go back to school or go do some other work. So a lot of people, myself included, started out in those LTE positions and spend a few years doing that. And then there's the opportunity to move up into a full-time position, either as a visitor service associate, ranger, maintenance staff, or, I mean, theoretically you could skip some steps and get hired permanently as a manager or a superintendent. But most people take that track where they start as a limited term employee and then maybe promote to a ranger, work some years in a full-time ranger position, maybe at one property or multiple properties to get some experience, and then might promote to a park manager position, spend some time doing that, and then there's the opportunity to move to a superintendent position, which manages or supervises a work unit. And then past that, we have district supervisors, and then we also have some statewide staff within the parks program. The DNR itself, many of the other programs are set up similar to that. The wildlife program has technicians as kind of the entry level, both limited term and full-time, and then biologists that a person might be able to move into. Fisheries is set up the same way, forestry. So they're all a little bit different, but there's still that same pattern. So there is that ability to progress on a somewhat natural scale.
Excellent. What do you see changing in the field?
Well, probably the most significant for us currently in the parks program is for the last several decades, our park rangers have been fully credentialed, sworn law enforcement officers. And over the course of this coming winter into next year, that is going to cease to be the case. And law enforcement responsibilities on public land owned by the DNR are going to transfer wholly to the Bureau of Law Enforcement, which is our game wardens. People are more commonly know them as wardens. And so that's going to be a significant change for our program, as it was for many years. As I said, the rangers, both full-time and part-time, the vast majority of park managers and almost all of the park superintendents had been sworn law enforcement officers, and we handled our own law enforcement on the properties. So that's going to be a big change for us. Our rangers, their duties are going to shift from that law enforcement piece to more the customer service, facility operations, problem resolution still, but not on the law enforcement side of things. So that's going to be a significant change for us. And then certainly I think in just about any, I suppose, work category or business category, the rapid changes in information, like technology, mobile data, those kind of things, I think we're seeing a lot of demand for mobile apps and more instant response to questions, or the ability for people to kind of be more self-service related to maybe mapping or apps or how they're going to use the property. And so I think there's going to be a lot of potential for change and growth in that area. We've seen a little bit of that, but as a state agency, we're always a little bit behind the curve on technology moving forward, but I think we'll continue to see that growing.